What's a secret you'll never tell your partner, but are willing to tell strangers on Reddit? I never paid for her engagement ring. I went to a custom jeweler to have her ring made. It's a beautiful piece and she loves it dearly. And it certainly wasn't cheap. Appraised and insured for around $10,000. The jeweler was dealing with a lot of family issues at the time and was incredibly disorganized. I went to pick up the ring and brought my checkbook to pay for it, and when she handed me the ring, I took it out and asked her who to make it out to. She said, "Oh no, don't worry about it right now, just send me a check in the mail." I thought that was strange, but sure, okay. She then hurried off to help another customer and I left. But she never told me what the final price was. For the next 6 months, I texted and called the jeweler asking, "Hey, just tell me what amount to put out and I'll mail you the check." And there was always a reason she couldn't tell me. "Oh, sorry, I'm out right now. I'll find it and text you later." Her shop was a few hours away from where I live, so it wasn't feasible to stop by and handle it in person. I tried for 6 months, but after that I stopped calling and texting and I just figured I got the ring for free. I wouldn't tell my spouse because I don't want her to think I took advantage of the situation, or that somehow the ring isn't as meaningful because I didn't pay for it. For like the first third of that, I'm like, OP is a bad person. Then I read the rest and I'm like, he did all that he could. OP tried his best to really make out the check and just be like, "Hey, here's your money." But she just kept refusing it. Strange. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. When he was away for work for 4 months and I was working full-time and single parenting and depressed AF, one morning I hurried our kid, 3, out to the car before daycare with my hands full of stuff. I put everything in the car, put it in a gear, and looked over my shoulder to back up. I backed up 2 feet and hit the brakes. I didn't put our kid in the car. I was looking at an empty car seat. My toddler was standing beside the door on the passenger side waiting for me, and now he was crying because he thought I was ditching him. If I hadn't looked over my shoulder, I could have run over our kid. Blame sleep deprivation and all the other crap going on, but mom guilt still eats me alive when I think about those 2 feet. And my husband will never know because I don't want him to ever think I'm a bad mom or know exactly how bad it was for me while he was away. Story 3. 5 years ago, I was sitting in a rocking chair with my newborn son, having a seemingly normal conversation with my partner. I was stressing about my current job and was beaten down by my latest unsuccessful job interview. My attitude had been going downhill and my partner could tell. There was a pause in our discussion and they finally turned to me and said, "Do you think you might be depressed?" I don't know what it was about the question, but it opened the floodgates. It was like someone had finally unlocked the door and it all came out. I cried for nearly 2 hours talking about everything I'd been bottling up inside. The crippling anxiety, crying at work every day, the helplessness of being stuck in a terrible job, the hopelessness that things would never get better, all of it. My partner was shocked. They had no idea this was all going on. When I had calmed down, we sat together and made a plan. Visited my family doctor and got some mental health referrals, and it was the start of a year-long journey that helped me rebuild myself. I was very fortunate to have a supportive partner and family. We were in a place financially that we were able to make some sacrifices so I could leave my job and do something else. But none of that would have been possible if I just never told them what was going on. I'm not saying you can't get there yourself, but sometimes even a rock needs a little support. This sounds like a secret you did tell your partner. And OP, don't get me wrong, great for you. This is amazing news and I'm glad you're on the right track. But this didn't really answer the question, did it? Maybe the moral is that maybe there are some things you shouldn't keep a secret from your partner, even if you think it's best if you do. Story 4. My girlfriend of 5 years has been deaf since she was 6. She reads lips pretty well but prefers sign language. I didn't know a single sign when I met her, but I could tell right away there was something between us, so I started learning after I got home from our first date. Fast forward a few years and I'm now fluent in ASL and we use it almost exclusively to talk. When she's not looking though, I talk to her even though she can't hear me or see my lips to read. I tell her how much I love her, how I'm gonna marry her someday, how beautiful she is, etc. I've even been practicing proposing, so it's not so terrifying when I actually do it. She has no idea, and I plan to keep it that way. If this is not the most cutesy thing I've ever heard. Alternatively, the setup for a sitcom or rom-com situation where she was just pretending to be deaf for some reason and is like, "Oh, I'm hearing all these things now, what do I do?" But no, that's not the case, obviously. This is just adorable. Story 5. That he legit saved my life. He's a nervous, humble guy who doesn't like undue pressure or praise. So I keep it to myself just how bad off I was before he showed up. Because even in the aftermath of my mom's death and even in the face of some pretty nasty health problems, which I was just letting slide because I was so depressed, I was kind of hoping they would unalive me, to be honest, I was very, very good at smiling and being charming. 3 years of taking care of a terminally ill parent taught me how to smile and bear it and feign positivity, even when you're running on empty. And I never felt like I could be anything other than the fixer, the doer, the person who always knows what to say, the reliable one. The one who has every answer and can make bad feelings go away just by fixing the problem for you. I was not allowed to be negative, ever. But he legit came in and helped me with my mom's estate, and cheerleaded me into getting out of a dead-end career and put a stake in the heart of some severely toxic relationships I had, and even helped me budget so I could finally afford health insurance. Which wasn't a moment too soon, because I caught that right in the nick of time. And he kind of just did it. In his mind, it was nothing much, because you were on the right track, but you had a lot on your plate and needed help. And I just nod and agree, because what else do you say? What I'm thinking is, I actually wasn't. I was just gonna let myself die because I was exhausted and miserable, smiles aside. Thanks for intervening. Story 6. Not me, but my friend. So his wife was really sick, but also extremely stubborn and religious, and she believed that God will heal her. So he came to me and asked for a few of my sleeping pills. They are really strong and get you into a deep sleep quickly. So he puts the pills in her drink like clockwork. In 30 minutes, she's out cold. He then asks me to help him get her to the hospital. Next morning, she wakes up in the hospital. Good thing, too, because on top of that sickness she had stage 1 cancer. She survived and it's all good now, but he made me swear I don't tell her what we did. Well, some of this is admittedly somewhat concerning for certain reasons. It's a good ending at least. And also, no matter how of faith you are, if it's Christianity in particular, I wanted to say, the Bible does say, go see a doctor. Nowhere does it say that God will heal all your ailments. I'm not a person of faith, but even I'm like, you can be religious and go to the doctor. It specifically tells you to. Story 7. I'm disabled. He works and brings home the bag. We do get disability pay, so it's still 2 incomes. I'm mostly clean, but my health gets in the way a lot. But man, I don't think I can ever tell him just how guilty I feel over my inability to consistently contribute. I hate that my disability and health overshadow some days. He gets home from work, and the minute he sees how sick I feel that day, he drops everything. He ignores his own exhaustion to fuss over me. He should be able to come home to a meal cooked and a relaxing night of sitting on his butt before the next day of work. Sometimes he does get that, but a lot of times it's just us making food together and cuddling and gaming, rather than me being able to take care of him. I hate it deeply. OP and anyone else in a similar position, I guarantee your partner knows this. And if they've good communication skills, if it's a problem, they'll say something. And if not, you kind of just have to know that they're doing it because they love you. They're willing to do all those things because they care about you so much, and it is kind of like resting for them. It's resting that is work, but I don't know, it rests your heart, your soul, whatever cheesy thing works here, because it's true. Being able to relax isn't just coming home to a cooked meal or whatever. It can be spending times doing things you love with the person you love. So OP, you have nothing to feel bad about. Story 8. That the thing that made me realize I was in love with her was when I was taking a shower and got done. I walked into the room and she must not have heard me get out. She was laying on her side on the bed with her eyes closed and was picking her nose. I didn't want to embarrass her, so I stepped back out and from a distance asked where I set my clean clothes. And then I walked back in, to make it seem like I was just coming. She was visibly startled and quickly stopped, but continued to lay there with her eyes closed. I pretended that I saw nothing, but I couldn't help but smile. It was just such an innocent and human moment. I have no idea why, but it made me realize right then and there that I loved everything about her. As silly as the moment was, there was a beauty in it, and I cherished that memory. Story 9. The time I had intercourse with a snowman in a ditch behind my house. You what, OP? Though it was innocent, it's not something I'd rather talk about with anyone except the thousands of Redditors and millions of people who saw the story I posted here that someone put on YouTube. Anyway, I guess I could tell it again. So I believe it was March 1993, and a huge blizzard swept the East Coast. I was young, bored, and extremely frisky. I didn't know then what exactly it was that I was feeling, but I knew that it was normal for my age. Well, we were out of school for what must have been 3 weeks, but it felt like an eternity. I wasn't around anyone my age. There were no girls in my neighborhood, and obviously no internet for browsing of a certain kind. But even if there was, I definitely would have been too afraid to attempt it. One evening before dark, I decided enough was enough and I couldn't handle the urge anymore. I had been holding back for weeks because I was too embarrassed to do anything in the bathroom. The guilt and anxiety of someone catching me was too much. My room wasn't an option because the door didn't lock, and when my door was shut, someone would ask why or just open it. It was far too risky and I couldn't jeopardize my reputation of being the only normal one in my family. I threw on my snow clothes and scuttled off into the wilderness behind my house with a plan. I wasn't sure I would actually do it, but I wasn't exactly thinking straight either for obvious reasons. Once I arrived at my destination, I decided to slide down into a gully that was about 15 feet deep. I sat there for a few minutes and listened to the footsteps in case someone saw me, but it was silent, completely silent, where I could just hear my inner voice say, "Don't do it, man. This is the moment of no return," I told myself. I was like a runaway train never going back, wrong way on a one-way track. Anyway, I got to work and started shaping the snow into a female body. She had breasts, curves, and the necessary inlet. I unzipped and went ahead with the task that lay before me, and within a minute or so, it was all over. A few seconds of guilt and shame overcame me as I zipped up and erased the evidence. I crawled out of the gully back through the woods to my house. I went to my room and tried my best to forget her, but to my surprise, that would be impossible. And every time it snows, I still think of her. Now, I don't usually like to do commentary in the middle of the stories. I like to let them all run out, but I absolutely could not say nothing to that first sentence. OP? Why? I'm just so lost. Yes, OP, you really proved you were the normal one in your family with this one. Story 10. 15 years ago, I had a new medication that did not mix well with alcohol. I had a party with friends. We decided to go out into town. Next thing I remember, I woke up in a cell at the police station, stripped down to my undies. Turns out I took a taxi. Instead of going home, I went to my mother's street. Apparently, I was lucid enough to remember her street, but not her house, and ended up in her neighbor's backyard making enough noise to wake him up. In the end, I got a $400-ish fine and a tremendous amount of shame. Story 11. When I was 14, my grandma passed away. For years, I had been bothering my parents for my own gold necklace. Well, Gram had a little bit of money, and she gave me the $300 for a gold necklace in her will. It was my pride and joy. I had it around my neck for 17 years before I met my wife. It was off my neck maybe 3 times in those 17 years. My wife, then girlfriend, knew how much it meant to me, and asked to wear it once. Well, it never came home. She had lost it somewhere or it had gotten stolen. I was distraught like crazy for 3 or 4 days while we turned our house upside down looking for it. Inevitably, I gave up, but she was very bothered by it all, so I decided to go to a pawn shop and buy the closest I could get to an exact duplicate. And then I told her that I found the necklace in the couch cushions. To this day, she thinks that I found my necklace from my grandmother, but this is actually version 2. Finally, a really solid answer to the prompt. Yeah, this is something you would never tell your partner. But I also understand the need to tell it to anyone, really. Strangers on the internet, perhaps. You did a good thing, OP, but that really sucks. Story 12. That his parents are really pissing me off, and I don't want to be around them anymore. They're lousy grandparents to our son, but not to his sister's children. Edit. For clarity, I love my in-laws. My husband and I have been together for 12 years. We just had our first son last year after trying for a decade. He was born very early and spent a good chunk of his life in the NICU. He's now 10 months old and has been home for almost 6 of those. This issue I've had with my in-laws is a very recent development. It started immediately when he came home. We told both sides of our family we wanted at least a week for the 3 of us to get adjusted. We also had 4 different doctor's appointments in that first week. When my husband told his mom that we wanted that week, she got immediately upset. She assumed that my family would be coming by. He assured her that they were not, but she was still in the belief that my mom would be here. My mom has a very demanding job and works a lot of overtime. She manages to come see him at least once a week, and she lives about 40 minutes away. When she comes up, she spends several hours here. His parents live between 10 and 15 minutes away depending on traffic. His dad does not work, and his mom has a lot of days where she works from home without a set schedule. They come up sometimes once a week and sometimes once every 2 weeks, for no longer than an hour at a time. I have told them on so many occasions that they're welcome to come up anytime, as long as they call prior to coming in case we have an appointment or my mom is here. Our son is on oxygen and is still very high risk, so we try not to take him out too often or have him get overstimulated with too many visitors in one day. They see my sister-in-law's children daily or very close to daily. They're older, between 10 and 15 in age. There are 4 children and the younger ones are not well behaved. When asked about why they don't come to see him more often, father-in-law was coming up with all kinds of things to be annoyed about. A Facebook post about a college my husband posted, a security camera we have in our living room from when we took a vacation that isn't plugged in, and that I was laying down because I got so little sleep the night before. I did talk to my husband about how I was feeling. He said he totally understands and said he's been feeling a little upset about them himself. Again, I do not hate them, they're very dear to me, which is why it upsets me that they don't want to see their grandson. Story 13. That she unalived a cat. She's very much a cat person. One time she picks me up from a friend's house and is driving through town. A cat ran in front of us and we heard a thud underneath the car. She screamed and looked in the rearview mirror and we saw the cat stagger into a driveway. She was very upset and convinced that it was dead. I told her no, the cat clearly ran across the street and is probably fine. She was meeting some friends and I was taking the car home. So she asked if I would check the driveway of that house on my way home to make sure it was okay. I said that I would. I drove back that way and parked a few houses down and looked in the driveways, and there it was, lying motionless, sprawled out on the ground. Oh crap. Part of me was thinking, just go home and say you saw it happily licking its butt. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to check to make sure it was still living. The problem was it was a gated property that was also a bed and breakfast. So I didn't want to just wander in on someone else's property. So I rang the phone number on the sign at the side of the road. By this time I'm thinking, what are you doing? You should have been home a long time ago. But I was on autopilot and just went with it. The owner answers and I tell him there's a possibly dead cat in his driveway. And I ask if he minds if I come to just check on it. The guy is like, yeah, I guess. It's just I'm out of town and there's no one here. But it's fine if you want to let yourself in the side gate. He also says thanks, so at this point I have to do it. I'm too far in now. I let myself in and walk over and there she is. A big, dead cat. Oh, balls. Well, I'll just tell my wife the cat wasn't there, and we can forget about the whole thing. Except the owner now knows there could be a dead cat on his property. And when he gets home and sees it lying there, he's got my number and will know I just left it there. So now I have to make a decision. Do I leave this dead cat here, or do I take it away? And if I do, what do I do with it? Across the street is a store, so I walk over and buy bin bags and rubber gloves. I make my way back over and scoop the fluffy corpse into a bin bag. Now I've got a dead cat in a bag. I walk over to my car carrying this black bin bag. People are walking past me on the street, smiling and giving that upwards nod that strangers give. I give a nod back, but I'm not fully into it because they don't know I'm walking past them with a dead cat in a bin bag. I don't feel like taking it into my car because, it's a dead cat. So I Google vets, and there happens to be one not too far away, walking distance. I ring and ask them, do they dispose of dead pets? They said they do. So I make my way down there, in through the front door, and ask the receptionist. She looks at me slightly freaked out and says, yes? I produce the bag and say, oh, well, I have a cat here, and can I just give it to her? She's like, yeah, you just leave it at our back door back outside, and charges me 50 quid for the pleasure. I walk back to the car and sat there for at least half an hour in silence and as still as a dead cat, trying to process the last hour of my life. I text my wife and say, no, honey, couldn't find the cat. She must have been fine and ran off somewhere safe. See you at home. OP really went above and beyond here. Unfortunate that they unalived a cat, but it happens. These kinds of accidents, they run out onto the road. Sometimes you can't even do anything. It's probably better than swerving and hitting something, right? So OP did the best he could, and also, it's a good lie to keep, in my opinion.